Hello and welcome to the Center Clueless podcast, the podcast that takes a day-by-day approach to politics. I'm Billy Ray Brewton.
I'm Erik Surwill.
Welcome, everyone, to another weird, wild, and wonderful week of America, the board game.
By the way, it's still funny that we're still using the same fucking music in the beginning.
I know. We kind of.
It's okay.
We kind of stopped the search for like an official theme song, and now
to find one. No, we have to find one, and I think I want to make a pass at that same group of guys again, because let's be honest, it's completely ridiculous that I can't use their song for the concept that they're worried that we're going to cause them some kind of pain. Don't look now. We're going to be. This is the reasonable podcast. I know it says Center Clueless, but here's what it truly is: it's the reasonable podcast. Okay, because the end that they're worried about is crazy. The end that the other end is crazy. Right? Both sides at the extremes are crazy, and we're not them. But Jesus, we need new music. We need new music. I like the music. Right? There's nothing wrong with the music, but I realize that I feel like we're wearing like Kmart brand clothes with this music. Like anybody can get that music.
Hey, I've bought like that's a word.
I've done bought.
I've done bought lots of shirts in the past from Target.
By the way, Justified has a new series, and I'm just like living inside of his accent, much like I live inside yours every Sunday. It's beautiful. I love the Southern drawl that hides the burning intelligence behind it.
Burning intelligence.
Well, no, that was the Clinton sort of thing, and that's yours thing too, dude. Let's be clear.
More like a soldering iron.
Anybody that listens to this podcast has no concept that what Billy Ray does is he rolls into a room with like this affectation. And really, there's all of this sort of deep knowledge inside that's moving things along. And he's playing the Billy Ray like character out here. It's so don't.
Yes, as Erik is describing, I'm a sociopath.
No, and not a sociopath.
As Erik is describing here on the podcast,
he's not a sociopath, but. I've been subject to it. I've watched other people be subject to it. If you've ever watched Billy Ray run a meeting, and with sort of the aw shucks accent going on, and he's really just moving shit down the road. It's hilarious. Our boss at the agency used to sit there and watch you do it, and the look on her face was classic. And I knew she was just evaluating you. And in the end, also ended up loving you because, right, you weren't a sociopath. Maybe could have been a sociopath, but weren't a sociopath.
I'm not anymore. No. I'm not anymore. Not since the retreat. Well, speaking of sociopaths, I think this episode is best kicked off with a new installment of Cancel Corner.
Nice.
And this is a very special episode of Cancel Corner because we're discussing someone who's actually pictured in the graphic. For folks who don't remember, it's Roseanne, Chick-fil-A, and our discussion point for today, Kevin Spacey.
Who, by the way, I support. So this is also a rare Center Clueless where I'm going to disagree with Billy Ray at least partially. So let's go.
Yeah. So Kevin Spacey was acquitted of all counts in a London courtroom. He is no longer guilty of anything by the definition of the court. He is a free man. His reputation is, we'll see how that's going to go. But, so look, I mean, I do have feelings about Kevin Spacey. He's one of the Me Too people that I felt like was entirely justified. And I think when you're someone, when almost everybody in the industry has a horror story about you, there's good reason for that.
How many of those are fake stories, huh?
I don't know, but I think enough of them are real when you know there's a problem. Like, I can't tell you how many people have a Kevin Spacey hit on me. I saw Kevin Spacey hit on this person. Kevin Spacey is a creep. Kevin Spacey goes to Bryan Singer's parties, like all sorts of shit. Like at a certain point, you're like, I believe this about this dude.
Fine. So I just
let's not forget those creepy ass videos he was releasing every fucking Christmas after that. Those were weird, creepy, and like something you would expect a guy in a windowless van to be playing to kids.
Something that's important to me. so you know people in the industry that you're not going to name, but people that you know to be honest, that you have some relationship with.
I personally know one person who has a story. Personally,
okay, great.
Who
So
has
that's
account of Kevin Spacey creeping on him and creeping on other people at a party in New York City. And
okay.
This was when this friend was much younger.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, like, when you've got that many stories, I get that you've been acquitted and good on you. You're still a fucking creep. And
so is he guilty of just being a horny, like a horny gay guy that likes younger men? Is that really where we're at, or is he something way worse?
I think he's something way worse. I can't prove that, obviously, but I think he's something way worse. And I think he's now going to get this brush of like, oh, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. I'm like, I think there are a lot more skeletons in that closet that can come out. But we'll see.
I'm ready for another season of House of Cards. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So, House of Cards, the zombie edition. I don't know. See, it's funny is here it is. I have such respect for you, and now that we're in the podcast, there was some teasing going on before, but now that we're in, I get the seriousness of it from you. So I can get that. But then, how did he get out of this? Then, look. And so, like I said, because again, not just my respect of you. See, my problem is I have this huge fan situation where I loved Kevin Spacey was probably top 3 actors for me before he, got caught in the middle of this mess. And I got to believe that he's at least doing some inappropriate shit. And I've listened to people that have complained about him using his position to perv on him, right? Like I've heard a lot of those stories about people that were working on sets where he didn't break the law, but you're a fucking dick. Those I can believe, but he's still not a criminal. He's just a weirdo. So are we just saying he's just a weirdo, or do you think he's still a criminal?
Look, I can't say someone's a criminal.
Well, no, in your opinion, not like your judge.
Yeah. Like in my opinion, I think he probably is. Yeah, I think he's probably done some heinous shit. I think he probably has. I mean, look. At this point, like the only worse kept secret than Kevin Spacey is all the Bryan Singer shit, and those two were like like I'm just like no, like I can't imagine that something heinous didn't go down. That said, I can't prove it. Obviously, a 12-person jury didn't believe his accusers,
right?
And so so he is now he is now acquitted. As for all of these people thinking that he's just going to rush back into Hollywood movies, they should probably think again.
No, that's not going to happen. He's going to rush and he's going to get some deals. But so the type of things that he's accused of taking, that he's partaking in, which is generally parties where there are older men, where there's a lot of younger men who are sort of there as the feature, right? That's sort of been. Am I crazy? Has that sort of been some of the bullshit that we've seen from him?
Yeah, it's generally him being inappropriate with people at parties and functions, and using his position of power in a way that would be considered abusive.
How common, respectfully, I'm asking you because you're the official gay person in the podcast. How common is that in that community? Do you think, and outside of the trappings of Hollywood, like as a young guy, I remember there being, and I wasn't a gay guy, but I had gay friends who often, frankly, would go off to parties like this to go have a good time. I'm not saying they liked it because I don't know. I was a kid at the time. And I'm saying these were young men, 16, 17, 18. So they were definitely underage. And it was a lot at the time. But when I was 17 and 16, there was a lot crazier shit going on all the time, right? That was 86, 87. There was still a lot of madness. Let's be clear. Like just in the early 70s, like what's his name? Jimmy Page and a bunch of other musicians all shared a 14, 15, 16-year-old girlfriend. Same woman. And I'm not saying it's right, but this is something that's changed over the last 50 years. I'm happy it's changed, especially as the father of a daughter. But in this case, we're talking about young gay men. How often do you think this goes on in that community? Not again against gays, by the way, but just in the community of rich older men getting in with younger, like that shit. How much is that going on?
I wouldn't know. I honestly would not know how much that goes on. I mean, I don't know any of my older gay friends who participate in those activities.
Right.
I'm sure there are people who do that, but I don't think that's an excuse for it. I don't think that's I don't see that as an excuse for it. I think it's very weird and very creepy. And if you're an older gay guy and you're like putting the moves on a 16-year-old, like that's problematic. Like that's
It's
kind of a
absolutely
problem.
problematic. But if we're going to go ahead and if we're going to go ahead and burn him down for it, and he has been burned down, he's like, as you say, he's not getting any movie roles anytime soon. He's going to be working with, I wouldn't be surprised if he's working with sort of like some of the other canceled sort of stars out there to create their sort of canceled artwork. But I kind of, if it's that big of a problem, and it is a big problem, if it's reality, then why aren't we addressing all of that? And then how come society? I don't know. It's funny because I don't like air quotes, scare quotes, whatever, cancel culture. But I also, if that's true, if that's happening, I mean, it can't just be him, right? It's not going to have been him and Singer, these singular, like the Lex Luthers of molesting young men. Do we have more people out there doing this with not just men also, but men, women, other people, right? Other everything in between. Why aren't we dealing with that then? Because if that's such a big problem, maybe that's where it needs to be dealt with. I don't know.
Good point. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. And look, look, he got acquitted. Good for him. He's going to get to at least try to work again. I think it's not going to, at least in a mainstream way, is not going to work out in his favor. And we'll see. Who knows? I mean, look, Mel Gibson's still getting roles, and he was canceled 20 years ago, and he's still doing just fine.
How do you think the new Gibson Spacey detective flick's going to do? I'm kidding.
Well, I know. I mean, that you joke about that, but like that's not entirely inconceivable. Mm. I mean, he's gonna. If nothing else, you're going to start seeing him pop up in more international films. You're going to maybe start seeing him pop up in some of these like direct to VOD, like action film type things. Like, but you're not going to see him in a mainstream way unless it's in like Sound of Freedom Part 2.
Are you not going to watch his stuff? You won't even. You'll completely keep him outside of your space.
No, I'm not saying that. I don't not watch canceled people stuff. I still listen. Look, I still listen to Michael Jackson. I still like. I don't write off someone's entire career because they're awful. Like I'm not going to I'm not going to be excited about it. But I'm gonna, if he's in a movie that I want to see that's got other people in it, it takes more than one person to make a movie. Yeah. I'm not that person who just like stops watching somebody, but I do think, I think if Kevin Spacey is the monster that people are saying he is, then all these other people that he's been monsters to should probably come out and say something.
Yeah. At least get it out there so that people know when it's coming.
So if he is the monster that everyone says he is, I think people just need to come out. They need to share their stories because, I know it's harder to do that when someone's just been acquitted of those things. And but I feel like if he is a monster that everybody says he is, more people need to come out. There should be more proof out there. There should be more to this story. Because look, I'll be the first to say, like, if nothing else ever happens with this, it's going to be a lot harder for me to be like, yeah, he's 100% guilty.
Right. I mean, look, I think that there's a good space for this because so much of the Weinstein was a monster, as an example, and so much of that was needed. But the stuff with Marilyn Manson has literally evaporated. Yeah. And on top of it, it turns out that the current girlfriend for one of his ex-girlfriends was actually the person that was calling people up and inciting them to make reports about him. Yeah. So I guess honestly, when that Spacey thing broke, I actually thought he was done for, so I didn't even really look into it. When I just heard it broke, I was hoping that there was something similar showing up, and there's not. It's just my understanding is, and I could be totally wrong about this, and please let us know if I'm totally wrong about this. It was just certain concepts of how evidence weights in English law that just didn't rise to the level of illegality. So I hear, and so that means you just kind of got off on a possible technicality or a group of technicalities.
But I will say that the downside of all this is let's play devil's advocate. Let's say that Kevin Spacey is absolutely 100% guilty. you've got these initial people in the Me Too or the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, like Bill Cosby and Kevin Spacey, who have now been released.
Yeah.
Who, like, I think we can all at least think that Bill Cosby did some fucked up shit. He may not have done it in the numbers he was accused of, but he did some fucked up shit. And now you've got these people who've done these horrible things who are now getting off. That's not a very good thing if you're someone waiting in the shadows, afraid to come out and actually talk about something that happened to you. That's not a good precedent for that, right?
Yeah.
That's going to make people more afraid to come out, because what's going to happen? Well, we all thought these people were canceled. Well, they might still be, but they're out. They're not guilty. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, Weinstein went to jail. I think that was kind of the big whale of that, and nobody can dispute that bullshit. That was just...
Yeah, that was blatant, and the reality was he leaned on the power portion of that. People were desperate to be stars. People that maybe had, or what was worse is, for me, what was worse about the Weinstein stuff is there were people who were already kind of stars, but this was going to be their big break into big stardom.
Yeah.
And he represented a threat not only to that big break, but to their existing lifestyle. And that's like, I mean, I'm not saying he's somehow worse than Kevin Spacey. If what people said about Kevin Spacey is true, he's just as bad, right?
Sure.
I think that what's kind of, I just kind of think that, I don't know.
Look, me and you actually agree on this a fair amount, in the extent of like, I think the Time's Up movement was a good thing on the whole. Like, I think it is a good thing that powerful people know that they're not going to be able to just skate by with horrible behavior, right? Like, I think that's a good piece of information for someone to have in the back of their head, because maybe that will keep somebody from acting on something that they shouldn't act on.
Right, like being crazy.
Yeah, that said, I absolutely think a lot of people who were accused during that period are probably innocent. I think that was a period of time when it was very much like this mob mentality, and it was like, let's take down powerful men. And I think there was another subset of that where a lot of people saw this as a way to get back at people.
Right.
Maybe not for horrific, awful things like what Weinstein did, but like, say you're Marilyn Manson. And I'm not going to be here and say that Marilyn Manson is totally innocent, but I'll say this, like, that case sure does seem like it was just somebody trying to get back at him.
Right. Like it weaponized his alternative lifestyle.
Exactly.
That, to be fair, I'm pretty sure, because I've looked at some of, like, there's a lot of consent checking in his space. By the way, that could get us in such big trouble. But there's way more, at least in my understanding of the stories around him, that is Marilyn Manson, that there's a lot of consent checking going on in the beginning, right? Like, you're getting in with him. So absolutely, you guys are going to do weird shit. That being said, to problematize it after as a way to get back at someone for an emotional slight, to make up stuff about physical slights or other stuff like that's not uncommon. You know what it is? I hope that for Spacey and for Cosby, at least, for that crowd, the crowd that likely guilty but got away with that crowd, that they're at least going to be more restrained in their predation. I'm hoping. But does this turn them into super predators? I'm hoping not. I'm hoping they're like, they just find people that are willing to play along in the way that they want to play, I
have no doubt that Cosby's probably done with any of that shit. Like, he's too old at this point. He ain't going to risk going back to jail like Cosby's. Right. Cosby had his fun, right?
Yeah, and do you think Spacey's ready? Because Spacey's still ready to go.
I don't know. I feel like Spacey, if Spacey did all of those things that he's accused of, I'll use the word if he did those, I think he's smart enough to know he can't do that anymore. I think he's smart enough to know, like, because I do think I think there is a difference between it being like a compulsion that someone can't control and just being a powerful person wielding that power.
Right.
He ain't powerful anymore by any definition. Like, he doesn't have any sway in this industry at all anymore. True. So that power is gone. He's just Kevin Spacey right now. He's, that's who he is. And so I would hope that if those allegations were true that he was acquitted on, that he would be respectful, smart enough to not
Yeah, but he's still a guy with what 30, 40 million in the bank.
Oh,
he's
sure,
still
no.
able to do damage in other areas if he's
sure.
still got those if he still has those tendencies, right?
But here, let him try it. There ain't no statute of limitations that's going to be run out on this one if he tries it again.
All right.
He'll just, I mean, this is not the time. 2023 is not the time to become a sexual pervert.
I was hoping to defend it more. I was hoping to defend it more, but when you get in here and you get serious, I'm like, he's right. Shit.
Well, and it's like, but that's cancel corner for this week, folks. Maybe we'll have more folks to be canceled or uncanceled next week. But moving on.
By the way, I like how cancel corner is turning into our spot to cancel people. It's happened, I think, 2 weeks in a row now. We're canceling Kevin Spacey, even though he's free.
We're not canceling Kevin Spacey. We're not canceling Kevin Spacey. He's free to work and do whatever he can do. Actions have consequences. So whatever he did, he's facing the consequences now, and that's going to be in the form of no work.
Right.
Assume that's an assumption. He could start. Who knows? He could be the lead in the new Marvel movie. So moving over to a discussion about a delicate discussion about our elders.
Delicate. Okay, go ahead.
Our elders, especially our elder politicians. So I was going to play a video for this, but it felt mean to do it.
Why? No, play the video.
No, I didn't even download it because I was like, it felt mean to play it, and so I wasn't going to play it. But so Mitch McConnell made headlines this past week. Mitch McConnell, who is like 81 now, he's fallen a couple times in the past year, and he was giving a speech where he literally just froze for, I believe it was 21 seconds or something to that degree.
Before they walked him away, right?
Before they
frozen, right?
Before they walked him away.
Yeah.
And it is a pretty uncomfortable thing to watch. You can tell there is obviously some medical issue at play, whatever that
lost.
is.
He's
I don't know.
Lost.
Well, it's not, and the reason I didn't want to play the video because it's not only that he looks lost and scared.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't want to play it. It just feels weird to play that.
You're so nice. That guy is such a monster on some level.
No disagreements. Total monster.
I mean, an amoral political. He is the classic amoral political monster.
Yeah.
But it's fact, Kevin Spacey played part of his political role based on some of the stuff that guy does. So, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, so absolute monster who's clearly having some medical issues. And it just kind of brings up this idea that people have been floating about now about term limits, about should there be term limits on senators, on representatives? Obviously, we've had this discussion about the Supreme Court. Yeah. Like, should there be term limits? And, I think there should be. I kind of have always thought there should be.
But here's the thing that's weird. Here's what's weird for me. The people, it's not okay. So let's be clear. It wasn't just McConnell.
No, we've had tons of people.
You also had Feinstein last week, who she starts to talk. It was during a roll call about something, and she's clearly not on the channel they're on. Yeah. And one of her aides then starts telling her what to do.
Yeah.
She's not in charge of her faculties, clearly at that moment, just like Mitch McConnell wasn't in charge of his faculties, clearly at that moment, just like we've seen, although the Biden stuff hasn't been as bad, I think Biden may have just had better handlers. So I don't know if Biden's been as bad, but I'd bet money that he was. This is also not new, and as you and I discussed earlier, Reagan was likely in the throes of Alzheimer's during at least the last 6 months, if not longer, of his presidency. What that calls up is, not only is this not new, we're only seeing it more now because of the immediacy of social media, the immediacy of the news cycle. And the question is, how come, and I already know the answer, this is almost a rhetorical question, how come the people around them don't stop this? It's because they're on a fucking gravy train.
Sure.
The people in and around McConnell, Feinstein, Biden, if we can believe that he's that bad now. Look, and to be fair, I've even argued the opposite of that. I have people going, that Biden may have cognitive decline, but you're going to vote for him over Trump? Yeah, all day, all week, all month. Yeah. And on Sunday too.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with that too. And why? Because I trust the people around him more than I trust the people around Trump.
But
And
people should be able to vote for that. Hey, you know what? I'm like, Biden should be able to come out. I'm in a little bit of decline, but I got a great team, and if I don't got it, they do. That would be a deal killer for him, right?
I will say this: I don't see the sort of decline in Biden that I see in McConnell and Feinstein. Like, to me, it's not that same level. I'm not saying it's not there.
They're not doddering, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that he's
doddering.
not experiencing some. I think he clearly is to some degree, even if it's just the natural decline of being that old, right?
Yeah.
But you can tell with Feinstein and McConnell, it's something more. Like, you can tell that it is something more.
It may be that it's happening more often, and also during the day, because that's the difference is Biden still has it earlier in the day. Generally, he's sundowning a bit, whereas as he gets tired and at night, it falls apart.
Yeah, I find with all of this that I am in favor of term limits. Like, I do think. I just do. Like, I don't know that I like the idea of career politicians who just get elected and that's their career for the rest of their lives. I'm like, no. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it has to be. I mean, let's say if you're on a 4-year term, you get 4 terms in that's 16 years. Like that's
a 16 or 20-year max.
That's a good number. Like, and most people, are going to probably be in when they're like 50. They're not going to be serving until they're 80 something years old.
Right.
Like I do believe in term limits for senators and for representatives and for the Supreme Court. Like, I think every political office should have term limits.
Do you think Ruth Bader Ginsburg should have been termed out?
Yes, I think
but she wasn't mentally impacted at the end.
She wasn't mentally impacted, but like, and maybe this is being put upon her, but just like the idea, it felt like at the end she was being, it felt like just like servitude. It felt like she had to stay in there because otherwise we were going to get a Republican justice, which we ended up getting.
True.
But it's like, it just felt like she was being like chained to the radiator to a degree. And it was
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
And it's like, when you're that age, like, enjoy, I mean, and I'm not saying that she still didn't love being on the Supreme Court, but like, and I'm not still saying that her mental faculties weren't there, but like, it's not just the mental faculties, it's physical faculties as well. And I just felt so bad for her that's how she had to end her career and her life, was just holding on to this position. And even though the exact same result happened, we ended up with the exact same result otherwise, which felt even worse. Like, it made me feel even worse about it. And, I mean, Feinstein, let's be clear, Feinstein should retire. McConnell should retire. Absolutely, they should retire. They should be taking care of themselves. They should be retiring. It is ridiculous that they're hanging on.
Feinstein's retiring.
Right? Well, Feinstein is retiring.
He's not running for re-election in 2024.
No,
this is the last.
And most people assume McConnell is going to retire as well. He just hasn't announced it yet.
Right.
And yeah, they should. They should retire. Absolutely, they should. I mean, and I know people out there are like, well, shouldn't Biden retire then too? It's like, well, like, if you show me a Biden flub as bad as that McConnell one, maybe I'll agree with you. But I haven't seen one that bad from a guy who has notoriously jumbled his words together. This was something he did when his mental faculties were there.
Right. Like, he had a speech impediment as well. But
so
I kind of, my concern is this. So I think, as an example, we've discussed this about in the future, like the concept of a Raphael Warnock in 2028 is awesome to me. But what I'm fearful of seeing is Biden wins 2024. I'm not saying he's going to, but let's just say he does. There's no way he finishes, yeah? There's no way he finishes. And isn't it going to be the game of the Democratic Party to have him leave, say 2-3 years in, drop Kamala on everybody, Kamala Harris, and have her run things for a year and a year? If she's able to get a couple of wins in as president in, say, 2 years, 22 to 24, isn't she a strong player for the nomination in the Democratic Party for 2024?
I don't know. I mean, right now I'd say no, just because her approval ratings are
so terrible,
bottom of the barrel. So right now I would say no, but like, I don't know. I obviously can't forecast like that, but I mean, that certainly I would assume help her if that were the case. But I don't know. Who knows? I mean,
So what's the age limit then? If you're going to put an age limit, I mean, you were saying 20 years in Congress or 20 years in government, but
I wouldn't put an age limit. I wouldn't put an age limit. I would put a term limit. Okay. I wouldn't say that over this age you can't run. Like there are going to be people in their late 80s who are as there as people in their 50s sometimes. I mean, I look at someone like William Shatner, who's like 92, 93 years old, is still the smartest and quickest guy in the fucking room.
Right. And like, what's kind of messed up is that, especially right now in the social climate of the United States, a cognitive test isn't going to pass because people are angry about cognitive testing in education, much less as a barrier to participation in government. And in fact, it's not any type of cognitive. I mean, that's on display. Meaning Feinstein's inability to function is on display. Now McConnell's inability to function is on display. So it becomes a responsibility of the voters to make an appropriate judgment. So I think that there's that in there as well as to why not many people would be okay with some form of cognitive test. But people have tried term limits, Billy Ray, and there are in fact some term limits, right? For some things, but people just go from department to department, right? Like that's what ends up happening.
Yeah, there are. I mean, there are some term limits, but not like
for president, it's obviously 8 years.
Well, clearly for president, yeah. But and there have been proposals. There have been term limit amendments that have been introduced, and it's not like this is the first time it's ever been discussed.
But what about term limits introduced with grandfather or godfather positions for the old people in there now? Do you think that would get passed?
Possibly. I think possibly. I think it could. I think it depends on, because here's the thing. It's like this isn't new information. We've always had doddering old fuckers wandering around Congress, barely able to eat a fucking peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
How old was Robert Byrd? Wait, hold on.
130, something like that.
Tell me, how old was he?
I mean, we've always had this issue. It's just getting covered more now because the gaffes are more accessible. And so we all see the gaffes a lot more. There have always been gaffes. There have always been old people doing old people shit. Yeah. That's what happens when the majority of your fucking electorate are enjoying the AARP discounts.
Byrd died in office at 92. That's how it went.
Yeah, and it's it's just these people holding on to power, which is the problem. It's like holding on to dear life for power. And it's you know what? No, you got 4 terms and then you got to figure something else out.
Yeah.
And then that's it. You figure it out after that. All and right. And that's being generous, 4 terms. How
about we say 20 years, whatever the mix. 20 years, whatever the mix. Because obviously as a congressperson, that's 10 sessions, right? Whereas for a president, a president's already trapped at 8, and I don't want a president going over 8.
No, I don't either.
In fact, I'm pretty happy with the 2-term president and how that's worked out.
No, I don't. I don't need the president to serve longer than 2 terms at all. But yeah, that's. Get rid of the old people. No, that's great. Not the moral of the story. Kick all the old people out.
Logan's Run. What was the thing they said? What would they say in Logan's Run? What was time to die at 30? What was? We're going to be hearing that soon. I don't know. I would agree with you that term limits help, but to be fair, I feel like just some other mess will show up in the space of a term limit. You know what I mean?
There's always going to be mess. There's always going to be. It's America. So the last piece I want to talk about for the break is something that I've wanted to talk about for a little while now, but and it's the fact that the oceans are coming back to kill us. I say that with a joking thing, but I mean, in fairness, you can spin this in a lot of different ways. You can look at it as, oh, well, the ocean is finally attacking us, or we're just reporting on ocean attacks more than we have in the past, which I think is somewhere in the middle. Because basically what we've seen over the last few months is shark attacks on the rise, orca attacks on the rise. There have been, seal attacks are on the rise. It seems, if you just look at the headlines, it seems like the ocean is saying we've had enough and we're coming to kill you. Now, that said, I saw a really awesome documentary on HBO Max, Max, the home of HBO. Yeah. It's called After the Bite, and it's a documentary about the recent shark sightings in Cape Cod and how Cape Cod has now become this place that is really vulnerable to shark attacks.
Yeah.
And they try to correlate that with the rising seal population. And then part of the argument they make is like, well, we should care more about human lives than we care about seal lives and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, actually, if I agree with that. Like, I mean, clearly shark attacks are on the rise because the seal population has grown.
Right.
And that's clearly the reason why. But, like, you know, they've been living in those waters a hell of a lot longer than we've been swimming in those waters. And I don't know. I'm just like, you know what? Maybe Cape Cod. Maybe you just don't get to go swim at your beach anymore. Maybe you need to
I kind of think that there's. I think that. So first off, if you look at the numbers, they're not seeing a general big. I mean, there's a rise.
Yeah.
But if you had like 57 attacks this year and you have 77 next year, we're talking about 20 more attacks out of a population of 350 million people in the United States.
Oh, sure.
Fine. 50 more people got eaten by sharks. There's also this weird thing where not everybody reports when they're attacked by a shark. If there's no damage, it might just be some story that they tell their friends. You know, I was out and man, the shark bit the board I was on. I'm good, but here's my board. The difference is now everybody's got social media within which to show their board, right?
Oh, yeah.
Whereas in the past, that shit didn't get reported. As you know, where that sort of type of thing really annoys me is in cities where crime is rising, right? But nobody's reporting the crime because the police are doing nothing about it. So there's actually this huge amount of crime that's going on, and you have motherfuckers going, well, crime's going down in that city. No, crime's not being reported in that city. I think this is kind of the same situation where you're seeing people now reporting animal attacks more, and I think there's a lot more attention on what's going on in the water, in the environment because of the rising temperatures that everybody's seeing and all of that. I think it. So I don't know.
I think it's all. I think the answer is it's all and. I think it all is part of the issue. I certainly don't think. I find it amusing because I don't think that attacks are on that much on the rise. I think I agree. I think they are just getting more reported. But I do think the rising ocean temperatures have something to do with the temperament of these animals. And I think if you're let's say that you're an animal that lives in the fucking ocean. And you're having to constantly find a new place to live because the place where you're at, the temperatures keep rising past the point that you can survive. And you're having to constantly fucking relocate. That would probably drive me crazy too.
Oh, by the way, so listen to this. And this is from The Week. Despite the influx of shark-related headlines, the answer is general. So the question was, are people being attacked more than usual? Despite the influx of shark-related headlines, the answer is generally no. The 41 bites in the U.S. in 2022 are 6 less than the prior year. In addition to that, the shark populations are also decreasing. Global shark totals dropped by 70% in the last 50 years. So what is a problem, actually, is that sharks are disappearing. That's actually the problem.
Well, they are disappearing, but like talking about that documentary I saw, one of the groups in there, they go around, they tag, the goal being to tag all the sharks in the Cape Cod area. And so they tagged 275 just in the Cape Cod area. Their expectation is that there are probably over 400 that are swimming in that area, which is a monumental increase to what it had been in the past. That said, the seal population also blew up. Right. And one of the people there said that they never imagined being more than like 4,000 seals. They're currently like 40,000.
Wow.
And
really?
So it's like,
I didn't know there was like a 10 times population.
Oh, it's like, it's just huge. And this is off the Cape Cod area. And it's like, and so that's why the sharks have started coming closer and closer to, these swimming areas, is because they're coming looking for food.
How much did they assert did human impact have to do on that? How much human impact is in there?
Well, one of the things that they rail against is the Marine Mammal Wildlife Act. because they think that we actually need to kill off some of the seal population in order to even things out. But that's not allowed because of the Marine Mammal Wildlife Act. You're not allowed to do anything
kill
like
seals,
that.
right.
And so that's what a lot of these people are jockeying for, is the ability to help to naturally, or not naturally, but to bring down the seal population.
They want to be able to manage the population.
Exactly, but they're not allowed to do that. And so it's this battle between, well, whose ocean is it? Is it our ocean? Is it? And it's like, my argument is like, no, it's not our ocean. I'm sorry. It is not our ocean. Like, I mean, the sharks are good. I mean, sharks are going to shark, yo.
I was going to say, over time, wouldn't the sharks just increase in size? So the shark population would increase in size. They would eat up the seals. And then over time, the sharks would die off as the seal populations died off. I mean, it died off. Wouldn't that be the normal course of things?
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing to do would be just to leave nature alone and let it naturally balance itself out, which is obviously what it's trying to do. Nature is trying to balance everything out, but it can't because of our dumbasses.
Right.
And so it's just like,
aren't we part of nature then, though? Like I think I'm doing the Joe Rogan thing right now, but aren't we part of nature? So I'm not saying that humans aren't in some way separate from nature. We are. We can at least perceive our own actions and their impact on nature. Animals can't. So we have sort of that space to be in and to talk about it. But maybe the fact that humans have some impact is just part of nature as well, is my point.
As the invasive species.
That we are. No, seriously.
And but I'm like, let the sharks do their thing, let the seals do their thing. It's going to find a way to balance out. Like, we just, maybe we don't get to swim as much in the ocean as we want to.
Yeah, I think that there's technology there that could probably help that. Technology either with some type of sound system or there's got to be something. Technology. So it's funny because I'm that guy. I'm that asshole that always is like, look, don't worry, technology is going to help. And I know that that's crazy for some people. That sounds crazy. But I think technology is going to be able to help in this case by finding a way to suppress sharks. I would assert it's probably going to be with something acoustic that we can move on from. Just like, and I know we're not talking about it, but we should probably start talking about all of the technological advancements that probably can help with global warming that for some reason aren't getting a lot of space in the press. Everybody's talking about, the morons over at Stop Oil, because it's more sensational, right? It provides more of a news burst, provides a bigger anger push, right? To see people blocking traffic than to talk about ways to actually fix the problem of global warming, which exists right now. So I don't know.
On that note, we are going to take a break. Then we're going to be right back with some more discussion points. So until then, enjoy this brief message, and we'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. We are back with the second half of this Clueless fucking podcast. So, Erik, let's talk about UFOs. Let's talk about UFOs and UAPs because for some fucking reason we got a whole bunch of UFO testimony this week.
Yeah,
the Senate held a committee held a meeting on UAPs, the House Oversight Committee, and what did we learn? We learned that the government is absolutely in possession of UAPs. We learned that non-human biologics were found at the crash sites. But did we?
No, I don't think we learned any of that shit.
I don't think we learned any of that shit.
I want to be clear here. To this day, not a single piece of actual evidence, not a single piece of corroborative evidence, not a single piece of evidence that could be corroborated. Nothing has been put into the record that can be evaluated by third parties of any sort. So what we've gotten is a lot of dancing and a lot of hurrah. And look, the terrible thing for me is there's some people online who are not necessarily well liked in general. As an example, Eric Weinstein, who's Brett Weinstein's brother, the sane one, the guy he works for Deal Capital as a director, right? And he's also an intellectual and a mathematician, and he talks a lot of shit to mathematicians. Even he is somehow captured by this. And I'm like, dude, I can't, until I see something on a table, until I see that UFO engine in a diagram someplace, showing some shit that we've pulled off of it to help make science better. I'm not buying any of this. It's complete, for me, it feels like this is a horse and buggy show that they're playing for attention. Like I don't. Who's running? Who's demanding these things in Congress? Because I've honestly been steadfastly trying to ignore this. Who's actually called those? Who called those congressional investigations? Who called for that to happen?
Well, the House Oversight Subcommittee are the ones.
So this is some fucking dumb Republican thing.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, let's be clear, this David Grush motherfucker seems like the biggest, like, jackass idiot on the planet. Like, I didn't buy a word he was saying.
Yeah, he got up, he started spouting gobbledygook at some point, and you're like, uh-oh, he's gobbledygooking, right? Like, dude, if you're talking about quantum this or dude, stop. Stop. The word quantum, here's how you know something's bullshit. Ready? When you hear the word quantum. I'm not saying that quantum mechanics isn't real. I'm saying that for you to get up in a congressional in a space where you're giving congressional testimony and you break out the word quantum, you're done. You've ended. You don't get to do that
unless you're Robert Oppenheimer.
And even then, like, how about this? Unless you're Robert Oppenheimer, who recently arrived in a time machine that he did with quantum math, then I'll listen to you. But that's not happening, is it?
No, it's just I watched the whole thing and I watched all these people for like why is nobody talking about the facts that we just proved aliens exist? I'm like,
dude,
what
I heard that at a park yesterday, and I had to sit there and just hold my tone.
Like, the only way you're going to prove to me aliens exist if literally one shows up on my doorstep and like. I mean, yes. Or like you need to show me an actual fucking alien. I'm not going to take your word for it. I'm sorry. This is not one of those issues where I'm going to be like, well, your buddy Jeff said that this happened, so I'm going to take that at face value. Jeff seems like a good dude. Like no, I'm not going to take that at face value. You need to show me your receipts. And if you don't have receipts, you're full of shit.
Mm. So there was a guy I listened to at a party yesterday, and he's an unbelievably rich kid. And when I say rich kid, he's like in his 30s, so maybe he's not a kid anymore. But he's absolutely a rich kid, an unbelievably rich kid. And he started spouting that off, and I just had to sit back and go, this motherfucker drives a $200,000 car. And this is where I now realize that society is sometimes unjust, because this idiot and he was spouting idiocy. Didn't you listen to all of what he said? Didn't you listen to all of what he said? He talked about everything, bro. He's talking to this other guy who, of course, is a doctor and is trying to be very gentle in his takedown of this guy. And it's not working because the guy's getting boisterous. And I just stayed quiet because it's so utterly ridiculous. I should have said, yeah, have we seen an alien yet? Have we seen the body? Have you seen the engine? Have we seen the engine from the flying saucer?
Have you seen the red cube in the clear sphere? I was like, dude is sitting there describing shit, and I'm looking at him and like,
yeah. And Battlestar Galactica last week, the rerun, sure, motherfucker. Anyways,
like, oh my god, it's like, I don't know. And look, this is coming from someone where if I found out beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was intelligent life out there beyond our own, I'd be ecstatic as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, regardless if it was evil or not, I'd be like, hell yeah, that's awesome. So I'm not someone who is closed-minded to the possibility. I am someone who thinks that knowing what we know about the vast expanse of the universe and how many galaxies and how many planets, I think there probably is, more likely than not, other life out there. Is it intelligent life? I don't know. But sure, I think there's probably other life out there somewhere.
Right.
But you're going to have to prove it to me. Like, it's the same reason. Look, it's the same reason that I am not a religious person.
Right.
It's like, okay, prove to me that there's a God.
By the way, I like
Prove it to me.
There's a guy on Twitter, and he's not just on Twitter, but it's where I follow him. It's Michael Shermer, and he's a guy that publishes Skeptic magazine, and he has been hilarious with this. Like he's been posting information that shows that where most of the UFOs, as an example, have been sighted, have been in English-speaking countries, because it's a massive hallucination and a trope in English-speaking countries, mostly Western English-speaking countries. When you compare, like the overlay to the rest of the world, it's not even close. It's like 99.9% of all sightings have been in English-speaking Western countries. So that means it's just like psychological problems follow specific cultures, and they do. Same thing. This is a psychological. This is some type of an artifact of our culture, and it's ridiculous. And it's fun to play with. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. These are some of my greatest genres to read as a child. I played Dungeons and Dragons. I played all those games as a kid. I played Warhammer as an older man, painting little characters, and I love all that stuff. That being said, ain't no one show me anything that I would ever believe was alien in nature. And until you do, literally, I got to see it.
Yeah.
All of this has been bullshit, I think.
No, look, I agree too. Shocker, we're in agreement on this. But I am open to my mind being changed, but you got to show me something. Whistleblowers who come with no evidence whatsoever. Like, that doesn't make you a whistleblower. That just makes you someone who talks too much at parties.
Right.
Like that's all you are. Is someone who
talks too much.
That's all you are. Like, you're not a whistleblower because you're coming. Like, I
talk too much at parties, Billy. I do.
Am I a whistleblower if I come out and say, you know what? I heard from a friend of mine that Joe Biden is a clone, and the real Joe Biden died 4 years ago. But I heard from my buddy Rick, so I'm a whistleblower.
Right. This is part of it, right? This is sort of like the QAnoning of society. Right?
It's
like more
ridiculous.
And more, you're getting this kind of like, and by the way, let's be clear, it doesn't help that on that sort of like in the less conservative space, you have people talking about people who live their own truth. You can fuck yourself. There is no your own truth. There is no whistleblower in this space. There's no your truth. There's what you can prove, and not only prove, but prove so that others can see your evidence and believe the same. That integrity, that you're going to make an assertion about reality that not only proves it to you, but can prove it to others that review what you say, that somehow is broken in reality right now. And I want that back, right? Live your own truth. All that shit. Get the fuck out.
Live your own truth. Live your own truth, Erik. Well, we're going to close out with a couple of conversations about Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
Hunter Biden's dad. Also known as the big guy. So there's been a lot in this area the last few days because the Republicans were up in arms because Hunter Biden had worked out this plea deal and was only going to face like these minimal charges and probably probation, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Went before a judge. The judge struck down the plea deal. Or it was struck down, whether the judge struck it down or not. The plea deal was not.
It wasn't the judge. And in fact, part of the problem, and I'm pretty sure it came from Hunter's lawyers, is they were at first of the opinion, or at least of the thought, or maybe they tried to negotiate, that he wouldn't be susceptible to other prosecutions from the same space of evidence, the same evidence that was getting him in trouble for this. And they weren't going to give him that. They weren't going to give him some blanket immunity. They were just going to be,
nor should they.
Yeah, by the way. Yeah. But they were just going to plea him out on this, and they weren't going to move on. To be fair, it might become the source of other prosecutions, and he wasn't going to have that. So, I mean, I think really in that space, it was appropriate for him to turn down the plea deal, because if he thought he was going to get that as part of his plea deal, well, no, you're not. And also, they're dealing with him kind of roughly on this. Look, I'm not a Hunter Biden defender, by the way. I think that guy is a junkie scumbag. Okay, Hunter Biden is a junkie scumbag.com. Period. The end. Okay, but that being said,
can we say former junkie?
Is he a former junkie? I don't know if I buy that.
I'll buy that he's a former junkie, but
dude, again, respectfully, I haven't seen but a couple of minutes of video. I haven't seen but a bit of the conversation out there. I think that guy is an unrepentant drug addict and is out there going crazy. My opinion, based on what I've seen. Yeah. Have I seen drug tests that prove that? No. But I really would love to see his drug tests publicly posted for 3 years for me to believe that he's not still out there doing crazy shit. Because it's very recent, some of the things he's done. Recent. Within, 5 years?
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
Within 5 years. Yeah, no, it's been pretty recent.
So I still think that he's problematic. That
we agree on.
That conversation where he threatens that WhatsApp chat, where he threatens that Chinese government official and gets $5 million for it, that is 100% pure junkie grift. Pure, unadulterated junkie grift. You've seen other junkie children of powerful people pull the same type of grifts. It's usually of their own parents. Dad, if you don't give me $1 million, the dealer is going to kill me. That game is the oldest junkie game in the world. And rich kids generally get more money for it. Yeah. And what we're seeing is Hunter Biden weaponizing his association with Joe Biden, his name share with Joe Biden, the fact that he's Joe Biden's son and he's using it to extort millions of dollars out of Chinese nationals. That's crazy. And I think he's, so I don't believe that Joe Biden knows this. But now that he does, Joe Biden should say something about it. He should talk about his brother, and should talk about his son, and he should talk about how odious this is and how it shouldn't be done. But we'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah, and I don't totally disagree with you. I also think Hunter Biden is pretty damn problematic. I give him a little more credit for being clean now, but I do think he's still problematic, regardless if he's clean or not. I don't know that all of his issues were because of the drugs. I don't think that the drugs were the whole issue there. It's like he's still. Look, I think he's probably just a rotten person, and I think regardless if he's on drugs or not, he's still the same rotten person. So, I think absolutely he should not have been given immunity for any other potential charges. Absolutely not. Like, he needs to be held accountable the same way anybody else is. And look, I'll give Republicans this. There is a point to be made about the way we're going after certain Republicans, but not as willing to go after someone like Hunter Biden. I do think there is an argument to be made now. Now, in truth, very different crimes, very different across the board, but giving them that actual, what feels like valid ammunition is not a good thing. Why would you give them that ability to go after that?
That sounds fair, except when you try to compare the fact that Kushner, and again, in my opinion, Kushner absolutely ran an influence campaign while he was working in the White House. I think he's gotten way more money than Hunter Biden.
Absolutely has
campaigns, and I think that those should be looked at. I'm not trying to be anti-Trump when I say that Kushner should be investigated for his use and misuse, his abuse, I would assert, of the position he held in the Trump administration, and in fact has been rewarded handsomely for that shit. Yeah. But so there's that where that doesn't jive with what you said a little bit, right? But what are the Democrats?
No, but let me be clear.
For
what I'm suggesting more than anything is that not so much that it's happening, but the fact that why would we give them that ammunition? Right. Which is why would we give the Republicans that ammunition? Because now, even we know the Republicans are hypocrites. So they're going to make the case, regardless of Jared Kushner, regardless of anybody else, they're going to make the case, the whataboutism claim, be like, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And it's like, the Hunter Biden thing is like, at first, when I heard about the plea deal, I was like, that does seem like a pretty cushy deal for him.
You realize that he actually is getting a harsher treatment from the judge in that case than normal Americans normally do, right? I'm pretty sure. Am I crazy to say that?
I have not heard that he's getting a harsher deal. I've heard that he's getting a deal. I've heard that he's getting a deal on par with what other people would get.
Was it on par?
That's what I've heard. But at that same time, I'm like, is it really on par if you're the son of the president and you're using that position to extort or almost extort money from people? Yeah. I don't know why that's on par. Like, is that something we just accept?
But I don't think it had to do with the extortion. I think it just had to do with his tax aversion.
Well, no, it was his tax. It's his taxes.
Tax evasion. Yeah?
This whole thing is about tax evasion, but it's like, but that's all he's got. But like, that's what he's being charged with. He's not being charged with the other stuff.
So the action of charging for access to your friends or to your family is an old. That's an old job in the United States. Well, it's an old job in human society. People have been charging access to their richer, more politically powerful, more socially powerful family for years, living off of that. And to be fair, you see it in Hollywood all the time. You see it in politics all the time. In other countries, you see it in the ruling tribes and classes.
It happens in every level of politics.
So what do we expect?
It always happens.
So for me, what would satisfy me is if Joe Biden called out his son and brother and said, listen, if you're doing business with my son or with my brother, you're not going to get anywhere near me with your conversations. I promise. Do you think that would be good for him to do or something like that, where he distanced himself from their behavior?
I don't think he'll ever do that.
Right.
I don't think he'll ever do that. He's not the type of person to like do that. And and that's frankly part of what I've always liked about Joe Biden.
Wait. So are you saying that you think it's appropriate and fair for them to do what they're doing?
No, but
why would you like Joe Biden for letting him do this garbage?
I don't think he lets them do that garbage. I think I like Joe Biden because I don't think he's someone who is. I like that he is loyal to his family. I like that he is not going to say anything. Like, he's not going to condone what they're doing. He's not going to make it easy for them to do it, but he's not going to come out and throw them under a bus.
Okay. Like, well, I mean, so
I have respect for that. Like,
someone has said this to me before. One of my most conservative friends has said exactly the same thing to me that you just said, and then he turns it on me. And this guy says to me, "Hey, if your daughter murdered 2 or 3 people, would you defend her or would you turn her in?" I'm like, and I know, and I had the evidence. I'd turn her in. Can you, dude? If you're a parent, one of your most important. It's like your last duty as a parent is to make sure that you don't loose a monster upon the world. I know it's cultural for me. Someone has accused me of being a wasp because it's a waspy culture thing that I'm not letting my kids out there in the world to do damage. And I literally believe that. My mom was like, I would ask my mom, what would she want me to be if I grew up? She goes, I don't want you to be an asshole. I don't want you to be a criminal. I don't want you to be someone that damages others or society. That's really, she said, as long as you're happy and not doing those things, I'm good, which was a nice thing for her to say. Now, to be fair, I proceeded to find jobs that would annoy her anyways because I was an asshole as an early 20s kid. Like, she was horrified that I was a repossessor, for example. But I was like, well, I'm happy and I'm not a criminal, but I steal cars. I'm abusive to people sometimes. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
no, but let's lessen that charge there. What happens if your daughter comes to you when she's, let's say, 16, 17 years old and says, Dad, I was at a party somewhere. It got out of hand. I had no way to get home. So I just found a car with the keys in it. I drove the car. I parked it, in Burbank somewhere. And then I walked home. No one's hurt. Obviously a crime. Nobody's hurt. Probably not a chance that anybody's going to get caught for it. What do you do? My guess is, Erik,
you're so fucking annoying.
My guess is that you're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to turn her in.
No, because she's not a monster, right?
Because also, what I'm going to do. Here's the thing too.
And by the way, what's worse is I'd probably go to the car and wipe off the fingerprints.
Because let's be clear, ahead. Hunter Biden didn't murder nobody either. Like, he's not a murderer.
Dude. He inserted himself in Chinese American politics and then yanked $5 million out of a Chinese national.
And I'm not saying
that's a political incident.
And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be held accountable for that. But what I'm saying is like, it's that argument of like, well, parents need to hold, like, well, yeah, they do. And I have a feeling that if Joe Biden found out that Hunter Biden had killed somebody, he would probably turn him in too. But this isn't murder. It is something different. And like, I don't expect Joe Biden to condone it, and I don't expect him to support it. But I also like the fact that he's not just going to jump out there and throw his family to the wolves.
So do you think that he talks to him? Do you think he goes to Hunter and his brother and goes, hey, could you guys shut the fuck up? Do you think he says that at least? I hope.
Oh, I would imagine that they have those conversations. Yes, Jesus. I would imagine.
Because honestly, the stuff that Hunter and his uncle pull is classic dirt. It's classic grift.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. And I think they should be held accountable for it. That's my biggest issue, is that he's not being held accountable for that. Like it's like Al Capone. We're going to go after him for tax evasion.
Right.
Like we're going to go after him for this. And I'm like, no, you should. Yeah. Like, I don't give a shit about his tax evasion. Like, you should be going after him for like the actual really sordid shit that he did.
Yeah, but there's no laws against that type of unethical dishonesty.
Well, that's a problem.
Well, is it? I mean, do we really want laws enforcing honesty when honesty can be such a difficult thing to quantify?
I don't think we have to enforce honesty. I think we have to set acceptable norms and acceptable boundaries of behavior for someone in a position of power like that, who has access to someone in a higher position of power. You are not allowed to do this. You are not allowed to do this. And if you are, then maybe that's an ethics violation, and maybe you get your security clearance pulled, or you get something but there have to be some levels of accountability for like extorting your position of power for personal gain.
Yeah. And then, you know what, honestly, a lot of this mess too is that we're in the Republican Democratic dichotomy, right? And so that like right now, every Republican I know that I discuss politics with right now is absolutely convinced that the cocaine found in the White House was Hunter Biden's. And it probably wasn't, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But there's nothing I can do to prove that to them, one. And two, I'm surprised that the White House hasn't tried to run this down a little bit more. Look, it's up to Joe Biden and Joe Biden's campaign and Joe Biden's team to keep this cleaned up, and they're not keeping it cleaned up. Hunter Biden is continuing to be a source of concern and a source of distraction. I'd rather Joe Biden be able to run and operate on his organization, his administration's, his organization's wins. You know,
I agree.
Instead, because we allow this type of grossness in the Democratic Party as well as elsewhere, right? It's going to keep showing up as a distraction, and the Republicans are just doing sort of normal political behavior to attack it. To be fair, what the Republicans have done is they've put an executive power in place. In this case, it was Trump, who's so easy to beat up because he's such a dumbass. And what I mean by that is he's going down for multiple things. Yeah. And I'm worried, as we've discussed in the past, that we're going to be an America that has a president literally running shit from jail, which ought to be kind of confusing, but we'll see.
Well, I was having a Twitter discussion with somebody, and they were posting about I don't even call it a discussion, but it was like they were posting something about Biden is clearly a criminal and Biden should not be president, so we have to rally our support behind Trump. And I was like, well, let's be clear. let's take you at your word and say that Joe Biden is a criminal and that we don't want to vote for Joe Biden. Well, it's very clear that Donald Trump is also a criminal. Yeah. It's very clear. Yeah. So how about you just not support the two criminals and support somebody who is not a fucking criminal?
Right.
Like, why is it, I mean, this is idea like, well, it has to be Trump or Biden. No, it doesn't. There are plenty of other people running for president right now. And if you think Biden's a criminal, and surely you know Trump is a criminal, and if you don't, stop deluding yourself. You can still like the guy, but motherfucker's a criminal. So let's say both of those two are criminals. Support somebody who's not a fucking criminal. It's that simple.
Right. And here's the real problem. I assert there are people in the Republican Party that aren't criminals, and also, by the way, are pretty honest about their personal feelings, and they express their political views not based on what direction the winds are blowing in. As an example, you see Tim Scott getting shit on right now because he supported some of the comments against DeSantis's new educational standards, which I totally agree with. The fact is, those educational standards don't foreground enough the suffering of black slaves in the United States. And it's okay for him to say that. That being said, he's being pilloried right now by the same group of people that would say support Trump even though he's a criminal. And so I don't know. It's kind of a convoluted mess all the way around. And I'm seeing a lot of bullshit being supported. And here we go. Sorry, Senator Clueless. Here we go. Trademark on both sides, right? That same type of garbage is going on. And I really kind of wish that honesty as a trait was valued more by both sides, right? If it was, you would see 0% acceptance for Hunter Biden's garbage. Instead, I see full-throated defenses. He's not president. Why do you care about this? He's not president. He's just the president's troubled son, which I agree with, right? By the way, if I was Joe Biden, so in your space, if I was Joe Biden and Hunter Biden was my daughter, I would absolutely say, look, I love my daughter. She's troubled. If she says that she's getting you closer to me, don't give her any money. I'm president of the United States. There's no way I'm listening to my junkie daughter coming to me about that. Now, would that hurt my daughter? Sure. But I'm president of the United States. I have a greater responsibility to keep shit clean. I have to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And the fact that he doesn't is disappointing to me. But you know what? Nobody's perfect. And I'm still voting for Joe Biden all day, all week, all month against Trump, against DeSantis, against Haley. I might consider voting for Tim Scott instead of Joe Biden, but only because he breaks the mold of political scumbags that have been fucking infecting the presidency for many years, although I think Obama was very honest as well. There's none of this going on with Obama. Obama's daughters are just fine. They weren't trading on his name, and his wife was highly critical of him sometimes and probably kept him more honest about shit. So Obama was that guy that somehow got it done without being much of a scumbag. Probably, and for sure, there are conservatives right now that listen to this program screaming out loud, Obama was a liar. Fine. Ain't nobody ever proved to me that he was a recalcitrant liar, much like, I'm starting to get worried about Joe, man. Like, I'm sorry. He should come out and say something. My opinion, and you're right, most parents wouldn't, and I know that it's nice and an honorable thing for him not to burn his own son and brother. I think he should for the good of the country, but whatever.
Yeah, I think the justice system just needs to take its course, but it also needs to make sure that it does its job. And so if that means Hunter Biden goes to jail for a little while, so be it. Like, I think that's fine. Like, I just think, Democrats like to come from this, and I've done this before. I am a Democrat. They like to come from this very righteous place, this righteous indignation about the right. But they're constantly they're just constantly tripping themselves up over hypocrisy. And it's like, don't defend what Hunter Biden did if you're still so intent on like going after Trump's kids and Jared Kushner and all these other people. Like, it's the same shit. It's the same dirty shit. And like, you've got to call it out. And I think it's incumbent on, for me, more the folks in Congress to be calling that shit out. And I would like to hear that happen more and more, other than just like, well, we don't have all the facts yet, or what. Like, yeah, you do. You got enough of the facts. You got enough of the facts to know that he was doing some skeevy shit.
Right.
Like, you can call a spade a spade. Like, it's.
So do you think that the Hunter Biden art sales are gross too? Like, you got that gallery. What's it called? The Georges Berger Gallery, who's selling some of his paintings for $500,000, and I don't like them, right? Like my kid could do that shit, but this is not a new thing where people who are related to those who are either politically or economically powerful, that someone comes and buys their expression in a way to get, not to necessarily to get closer, but it's kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of like how privilege is spread around in this country.
I will say, actually,
have you seen his paintings?
I actually think his paintings are pretty good, frankly. Like, I don't think they're $500,000 good. I mean, at that point, you're just paying for the name more than you are the work. But like, I do think he's a pretty good artist. Like, I do think he's actually a pretty good artist. I'm
looking at some of them. I'm looking at now on the George A. Burgess Gallery, you got Malibu, you got Untitled on Canvas, numbers 66, 63, and 62. But and you know what? They're interesting. But $500,000?
Oh no! Look, I don't think anything's worth $500,000 painting wise. I mean, anything. But like, that said, I'd much rather have an original George W. Bush painting than I would a Hunter Biden painting.
Right. And George W. Bush isn't commanding near the prices. He's
No,
commanding
no.
the thousands, not hundreds of thousands.
Well, yeah, and so like that's the thing is like I mean that's very like obviously way too much money for a fucking Hunter Biden painting. I like his stuff, but it's also it's hotel art. I mean, let's be clear. It's maybe high-end hotel art, but it's hotel art. It's what you'd expect to be on the lobby of a hotel. I ain't paying $500,000 for something that I can see at the fucking Ramada Inn down by the airport.
But is the fact that reality exists, that many of the people buying these paintings are in fact also supporters of the Democratic Party, so it's their way of infusing cash outside of the PACs and outside of the $2,000 caps. So isn't this just another sort of
this is no different.
Isn't this underhanded political patronage?
This is no different than the Trump NFTs.
Right. Or the Trump. How about this?
Holding the flag with his buff open. Like, it's no different than the Trump NFTs. Like,
I'm sorry. How about the part where people would come into Washington, D.C., stay at the Trump Hotel for inflated prices across the street from there's all of this is garbage. And I think I wouldn't allow for it if I was president. I would not. I was like, no, don't stay at my fucking hotel. Stay away from my hotel. I care about what that looks like.
Yeah.
But I guess what's funny, and we've talked about it, I think, on the show before. I've had people come and offer me money because I've given them deals at the agency. And they've been like, $1,000 due. And I'm like, are you kidding me? First off, I don't ever want to hear that again. Second, and here's where you could do it for me. Show up, do a good job, motherfucker. Don't make me look stupid for having used you. That's what I want. And I think that that's something that you should be able to expect of others who take roles in society. I'm not Mr. Special, but I'm also not, so that applies on both sides of it. If I'm able to apply this in my own life, and let's be clear, I could use $1,000, right? I'm not poor, but I could use an extra 1,000. I got shit to do. I should be able to maintain appropriate levels of what's the word I'm looking for? Of ethics, as should the president of the United States, as should the people that work around and live around him. I think it's bullshit that people get away with this. I think it's bullshit that it permeates not just American society. Patronage permeates all political societies, and it's gross everywhere. And it's the fact that we allow a level of this to exist as people who vote for these people. It's really on us that we allow it to exist, but whatever.
Well, I think that's a good way to end this episode on just indignation from Erik. It's a great way to end an episode. We did get confirmation that in a couple weeks, we had talked about trying to get Kathy Baldock on, who is the focus of that documentary we discussed last episode, 1946. Kathy's got some family issues she's dealing with at the moment, but we are going to be able to get her on in September. I'm looking very forward to that. I think that's going to be an awesome discussion. That entire episode will be catered around.
What that's about, everybody, if you're not understanding or not remembering what he's talking about, is she's written that book where there's a conversation that all of the anti-homosexual conversations in the Bible likely weren't the original inscriptions. They were likely drummed up during translation periods where where the Bible was retranslated and people just added the anti-gay stuff in. That's crazy to me. I got to read the book before she comes in, because if that's true, that's probably one of the most monumental conversations to have in the last 20 to 50 years. Because if it doesn't say gay bad in the Bible, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
At least from a religious point of view. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we are looking forward to that. We'll be back next week with more inane conversation about random world news and politics. But until then, the Center Clueless podcast is produced by Ryan Verrill. Hi, Ryan. Please visit us at centerclueless.com for more information, or find us on the socials at Center Clueless. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and tell your friends to tune in. If you have a question, comment, or criticism, you can email us at centerclueless@gmail.com. And until next time, whether you're left, right, somewhere in the center, or Hunter Biden, we hope you're a little less clueless, just like us.